Hey everyone, it's Audio Odyssey. I know I've been gone for quite a while, but I'm back, and I've been recently doing a bunch of mixing on some drum covers by a good friend of mine, Darren, as you can see right here. Definitely check out his channel and check out his drum covers and take a listen to what I've been doing. One of the reasons I'm doing this video is we've been getting some interest in how we're getting the snare sound that we're getting. So one of those people asking was MB Drums, and I want to say thank you for the question and giving me something to make a video about. And everybody should check out his channel and see what he's all about. So I'll link to both of them in the description. So how are we getting that snare sound? Let's take a look. I am working in Studio One and mostly mixing in Console 1 using the Solid State Logic SL4000E emulation. I go over snare some. I kind of briefly described this in the comments section, but what I'm doing is mixing the snare top and snare bottom, balancing out the amount of each one until I get a sound that I kind of like. So what we can do is just solo this together. There's just the top. There's just the bottom. And together. So that's the first portion of it. When I add in all the processing, you can hear it gets quite a bit louder. So what did I do? First thing first, we have a good quality sounding drum to begin with. We have a good recording of it, and it sounds decent. So without a good drum sound to begin with, you're never going to have a good drum sound at the end. If you take a look here, I have inverted the phase on the top snare mic. And the reason I did that was because during my checking of phase, I found that that snare mic was out of phase with the rest of the kit, especially the overheads here. So you can hear it gets quite a bit thinner when I take that and it's out of phase. When I put it back, invert that, and puts everything back to in phase with each other, you can hear the low end. You can hear the body of that snare much better. That's the first thing that I do pretty much every time I'm mixing drums, is to make sure that the kick and the snare and everything is in phase with the overheads and they're in phase with each other so that you get a nice full sounding drum. The next thing that I did is, you can see I have some EQ, I have some dynamic shaping going on, and I have some compression going on, as well as a little bit of driving character. Some of this is made easier by using Console 1, but it's nothing that can't be replicated with other plugins in your DAW. So how did I do that? Let's take a look. I'm going to take the EQ and the compressor out. You can see I have a low cut to about 110 hertz and a high cut to about 12,000 hertz. There's not a whole lot of information in the snare going on below that level or above that level. You can see way down here there's not a ton. Way up here there's not a ton. So I'm just kind of freeing up a little bit of headroom there and taking out some of the stuff that's not necessary for the mix. Next thing I did was I put in a gate and set the release time. My attack and release values are typically set using an app called Music Math, and all it does is tell you how long in milliseconds a note value is for any given tempo. So I get the approximate tempo and I plug that in and I select a time that is somewhat musically in time with the rhythm. And you'll find that that's a common thing to do, and it's actually quite helpful. I have the gate set in a way that you don't hear a lot of the other stuff. It's kind of cutting out some of the bleed from the hi-hat and the rest of the kit, so we really get mostly the snare. You can hear that it chokes off everything outside of the snare. Not completely, but it takes a lot of that extra stuff out. I also have some transient shaping going on. You can see there's some sustain here. That's bringing up some of the tail end and some of the snare from the bottom mic. And then I have some punch, which is bringing a little bit more attack to it. And then as we work our way into the EQ portion of the snare, we already talked about the high and low pass filters. And then you can see I'm taking out a little bit of mud here, 780 hertz, medium Q, and I'm dipping out about 4 dB. And then I'm also boosting about 3 dB at 2 kilohertz to get a little more attack in there. Next up, we've got the compressor section, and I've set the attack relatively fast. This goes to about 30 with this compressor. That's as high as the attack will go. So we're getting most of that, and that lets the transient through. We've got the ratio set to infinite, which is more of limiting than it is compressing, and we've got the threshold down pretty far so that we're getting quite a bit of compression. When I press play, you can see we're getting like 6 to 10 dB of compression, and that's pretty compressed, but what I've done is mixed in parallel. I've mixed 40% of the dry signal back in with the compressed signal, so it's less over compressed. A little more of that natural sound in there as well. The next thing I did was use the drive. This helps to shape the tone as well. Drive is emulating hitting the electronics in the mixing console at a higher level so that you're getting a little bit of saturation and distortion. And what that does is also increase some of the overall gain and kind of makes it a little more noticeable in the mix. The character portion of that is basically a tonal control. It's kind of pushing it towards either odd or even harmonics. If we go to the right here, we're getting a little more brightness, and if we go to the left, it's going to get a little more of the kind of low-end warmth. I've got it stereo track. This has actually been monoed out. It shows stereo here. Everything's centered on the kick and the snare, and I've kind of balanced the overheads and everything to kind of make everything sit in the panorama the way that I want it to. So when you listen to it, hopefully it sounds like a balanced kit and mixed, where you see Darren playing the drums, and it looks correct when you hear it. That's kind of how I got that sound in this mix for the snare.